You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast. Stories of overcoming obstacles and finding self-empowerment with Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Hi everyone, welcome back. And I'm so excited to have another international guest. And we connected and we were both like, cool, you're into authenticity, rawness and realness. That is my vibe too. And we're all about, that queen energy, all of the things. And I feel like both of us have a story to tell, and it's about adversity into becoming the version of ourselves that we are now. So welcome, Radesha. It's such an honor to have you here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, honey. Queen to
Amazing.
queen, yes.
Yes, love that. And please, could you tell everyone your title, who you are, and what you do?
Sure. So Queens Don't Settle, hello. But Queens Don't Settle LLC is my company. I consider myself, I guess, a creativepreneur now. Because I'm very much into the performing arts, poetry, dance, but also, of course, on the spirituality slash self-help side, the metaphysical, law of attraction stuff. I'm also very much into that. Basically, my mantra in a nutshell is empowering women not to settle. I help women to know their worth and value so they don't settle. I have a podcast as well. I have affirmations, a couple of books that I published, and then I'm also working on some other things, I'll just say. For now,
Yes.
yeah.
I love it. And I love that you said creatorpreneur. I think that
Creativepreneur.
creativepreneur, yeah, that is so it, isn't it? And I feel like I've never heard that before, but I would say that I can self-identify with that as well. Like absolutely that thing. And I just love that I keep finding people that are just my vibe. And it's such a lovely thing because I think, for anyone listening that maybe hasn't allowed themselves to come out of their shell yet and be their full authentic self, that when you do, you are just a magnet to all the people that feel the same way. And I've constantly been reminded of that again from this series of my podcast, is that there's so many soul aligned people that are just coming into my world, which I absolutely love. But as always, like I said, we have had a story, haven't we, to get there, to get to where we are now. So I'd love for you to kind of explain to the audience your story and like why you formulate this business. I'm just going to give you the floor and I'll chip in where I feel like we want to know more.
Sure. Well, I'll try not to go back too far. But I would say, Queens don't settle. So that came to me. I was in a job, and at the time, I think, so at the time I had already published my first book. But I do remember being in that job, and I just kind of asked the question, to God, the divine universe, whatever we call that. But I was like, I need something else. Like, I need something else for the women, and I swear it was like instant. And it was like, Queens don't settle. Like, do a poetry book. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. So the divinity within me came up with that. And then that's when I came up with Queens Don't Settle. Now the crazy thing is, or should I say the interesting thing is, I also have a background in pageantry, but I never thought about it in terms of or related it to sort of pageant queens or pageantry in any way. It was just kind of women and me thinking that they're queens and that should be celebrated. We should refer to ourselves as that. And so Queens Don't Settle came that way. I wrote the poetry book. which it is an empowerment poetry book. It's not just, I guess, a normal poetry book. It has actually things in there for a woman to write about, right? Because I have like queendom tips in there, and then she's supposed to answer the question. Um, but my journey, whew, I would say where I'm at now. Um, so I I've lost my mom and a sister, and they were pretty much back to back. Um, and it wasn't that long ago, and so I am definitely still processing that. Um, and when I think about them, I think about women who did not put themselves first. I think about women that sort of in our culture, unfortunately, in our society, you know, we're conditioned. We just have to call a thing a thing. We're negatively conditioned, negatively programmed as women, you know, to really put everybody else's needs before ours, right? And then the conditioning that comes with that is that it's like it's a badge of honor, and it's not. To be selfless. Oh, she's so selfless. That's not a badge of honor, you know. And I remember hearing, um, I think a talk that Oprah did, and she just basically said something about, you know, being self-full. You know, so when someone says she's so full of herself, it's not, you know, it's not like it's derogatory, right? It's a compliment because she's like, yes, I am. I would rather be self-full, you know, and I've never forgotten that. And I look at some of the things that I wrote in one of my journals and just talking about them and that it's not a badge of honor and women need to put themselves first and really live life on their terms and do it guilt free. And that's such a huge thing. Um, and I know even in families, right, because we all have dysfunction in our families, what I would say is, you know, I just remember even with my sister at the time, she's my aunt, but she's my sister. We grew up together. And it came to a point even in our family that it was like, we're not going, excuse me, we're not going to wait on anybody anymore, right? Like we're going to live our lives. Like if we keep waiting, we're never going to travel. We're never going to go anywhere. You know, every time we try, unfortunately, to plan something, it just kind of falls by the wayside, you know? And so it's kind of like, okay, at some point you just have to, we can say take your power back or just kind of come back to yourself and say, you know, this is my one life to live. I have to live it. And so from that point on, yeah, we just started doing stuff on our own. I'm so grateful that there's a trip that we took for her and mom's birthday because they're a day apart. And we took a trip to Jamaica. And I'm so grateful for that because, of course, who could see what was coming, you know, a few years later. But it's so many little things. I mean, a woman honoring herself. I mean, really, truly honoring herself and having boundaries. I don't think anybody, I, I, I speak for myself, we were really taught about boundaries, right? We weren't really taught to have boundaries. You're just people pleaser and you're agreeable and you go along to get along, you know, and you put people before yourself. And then when you do that over time, naturally it becomes a habit, which becomes a whole lifestyle. So now you've lived your entire life really at the expense of others. And, you know, something like grief for me has been my rock bottom, but also very much, I would say, my wake up call because it forced me to have to deal with a lot of, I guess, emotions that maybe I didn't realize were suppressed. Um, and just a lot of different things within myself and in my life. And I think every woman needs to sort of go on that journey. I think she needs to find herself. I think she needs to not be in a relationship. You know, I mean, there's a. I just think there's something in that, and there's a beauty in it. It's hard. I'm not going to lie, right? I don't make things sound pretty, but there's growth in that. Your self-love and your self-respect increases. How you view yourself, your perception of yourself. I think every woman probably needs to go on like a self-discovery journey, or she needs to be in solitude for just a little bit at some point in her life, because I'm telling you, she's going to expand. She has she has no choice to, and some things are probably going to come up for her that she wouldn't think. But it's going to kind of be like an aha for her. And so I would say grief has certainly gotten me to where I'm at in loving myself more and prioritizing my well-being. Okay, looks like my screen was frozen. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, prioritizing my well-being and having boundaries, and I would say not over functioning and not over functioning. Uh,
Mm,
and when I think about them, I definitely think she did that. Um, and like I said, it's not a badge of honor. Uh,
mm,
yeah,
mm.
selfful as opposed to selfless. It's not a badge of honor to live your
Yeah.
life that way. And when you finally meet somebody, it's kind of like sometimes, people aren't there for you because they're so used to you being the person to always kind of step up and lead and initiate and handle stuff. And it's like, it's not supposed to be like that, or it shouldn't. Um, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that so vulnerably. I think that's, yeah, just a really beautiful story. And I completely, deeply resonate with everything you were saying. And funny enough, I was on mute, but actually I found myself going, quite a lot through what you were saying, because I really do deeply, deeply resonate with all of that. And it's a lot, it's so, so a lot. And I think some people are lucky enough to not have to grieve until very later in life, which is amazing. Unfortunately, I've not had that luxury, neither of you. But exactly what you said there, it is what shapes us and also gives us that ammunition to awaken, to process life in a different way. And every hard thing is an opportunity, isn't it? And I think that, you coming into this business has absolutely been, a honor of your family members, because without that realization, you probably never would have stepped into this. And that's why, for me, I always look and think everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? So I think, yeah, your story here is testament to obviously what you've been through, and so beautiful. Like, I love that you said about being selfful, because that's absolutely everything I teach as well. I think that everything you said, even down to the badge of honor, which, funny enough, my last two guests have mentioned that. And it's something I used to say all of the time, and I still do, about how we wear our wounds as a badge of honor, like what we've overcome, and,
Yeah.
the trauma we faced, or the things that we did, the overworking, the overgiving, like you said, it's that badge of honor. And it's so interesting that everyone's bringing that up at the moment, because we're trying to dismantle that, aren't we? We're trying to say, actually, none of that gets you anywhere. It only gets you burnt out and resentful, which is absolutely not what you want to be. And I really do feel like the tides are shifting for us to step into this version of ourselves that we deserve to be, that full version of you that's overflowing, that has more love to give, is absolutely the route that we all deserve to be taking. So yeah, I'm really, really happy that you found that for you. I'd love to know kind of a little bit more about um I guess what your business looks like for you, as in, like, what do you help people achieve? I'm guessing it's women focused, but on the basis of obviously what you've been through, how that works now for you and, yeah, the business.
So more so the podcast, but I also have a blog. I haven't written in a while, but I tend to do a lot more of just the motivational and inspirational stuff. I am actually working on a course, so I'll finally do that. I should have done that a long time ago, but again, with the grieving process is very up and down, and you just kind of have to find your way through that and process that. So I definitely give myself grace, and would advise any other woman going through that to give herself grace. But more so, I would say the poetry, the podcasts, I dance as well. So the creative expression is sort of a part of that. I don't teach dance, but I do believe in simply showing up as yourself. That is also healing to the world. Doing something that enlivens you and brings you joy is also a way to raise the vibration of this world. So that's more so kind of where I'm at right now. I'm focused on the course, but typically the blog, the affirmations, and then my books. And then I typically do a lot of the inspirational and motivational stuff.
No, I love that. And I think the poetry is such a feminine space, isn't it? And like how lovely for women reading that to just soften into themselves even more, like I think that there's something beautiful about stillness in healing that I feel like we don't surrender enough into. I think we're always looking to how to get out of it, how to do the things to move through it, but actually that surrender of being, of seeing other people in the same space as you, that's the comfort that your soul needs, especially as a feminine energy. You're like, that's where we deserve to be, in that space of surrender and of just beingness, and I teach that all the time. And I love that that's there for you. And another thing that you said about the queendom, funny enough, my first ever in-person event, I called it the Queendom event. So it's really funny how the synchronicities work, right?
Yes.
And it's like I said something about it's time for the patriarchy to crumble, and it's time for the queendom to reign. So it's all about this. Yes, exactly that. So it's just funny how we are aligned here. But I love that you're giving yourself the grace through this period, because that is, fundamental. And I wish that I'd done that for myself more. I mean, at the time where I was grieving, I was still in survival mode heavily. So I didn't really know that the grace was an option for me, but that grace is something that I give myself all of the time now. And I'm very much not front loading myself with things to do. I'm surrendering into the fact that if I get 3 things done on my list, or I cut the list down even more, I'm just trying to be very good at that, because I lived heavily in my masculine energy. So yeah, honoring that space for myself now is a really, really important thing for sure. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that on there. But with all of everything you're doing now, and obviously living through, teaching, inspiring being, what is something that you find that is coming up for you all the time, that you're constantly having to work through even now to this day?
Good question. I think I'm human just like the rest of you, and I have my days where I might question myself, and question, am I enough, or am I good enough, or is it worth it? Everything that I'm going through and I've been through. I see the vision. I have a vision board. I definitely believe in vision boards, right? I have that. I have my own affirmations that I listen to. So I'm doing the work, but that doesn't necessarily completely alleviate the human part of me that still questions. So I think it's just an everyday thing of having to have that pep talk with myself in the mirror, and push and just give myself grace. I'm very, very honoring of that now, because I wasn't before. You said you weren't, and I resonate with that. Like I wasn't before, but I came to a point where I felt better and I feel better when I'm just kind of at peace. And so, as opposed to doing, if I can just, relax on my couch and just watch a show, I think there's something in that. It's not being lazy, it's giving yourself a moment to just rest and not be in this sort of hyperactive mode all the time, because that affects your nervous system too. And as you said, like survival mode. No, I've been in survival mode. I could still be in survival mode, but I at least feel like, and I've told myself I'm in thriving mode now. Like I'm not in survival mode anymore, because there has to be a point where you are still, right? Be still. There has to be a point where you allow, and that can't happen if it's always this hustle, 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 go, 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 go. It's like, ugh. But you need some sort of calm in that. And so maybe that was a little bit more of a loaded answer, but the reality is I'm not superhuman, and I have my doubts and I have my fears, and I question myself, and I still have to have a talk with myself in the mirror, in the mornings. But do I believe in myself and what's possible? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a part of the process, honestly. Yeah.
No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I do think that, the beauty of that answer was the humanness. As you said, we aren't superhuman, and everything that, if you do this type of work, hopefully you are practicing what you preach, and evidently you are. And I think that's, the powerful thing. Like when I say to people about, when I walk with my clients through their journey, I'm like, we're going to create a morning and evening routine. And they're like, why? And I was like, because you need to sandwich yourself in ways to support you, because you aren't just going to wake up every day and feel amazing. That's just not
Right.
it. Like,
No.
in what reality does that even happen? Like, I'm sorry, but unless I'm retired in the Bahamas somewhere, or I just choose to live there, I doubt that would be a very norm of a situation. So how can you create that for yourself every single day? And it's through practice, right? There's no way, like even the most if people are
if this episode
religious,
resonated with you, please do like, follow and share with someone that you know would benefit.
Every week,
if you're looking to dive in deeper to becoming your most unapologetic, most authentic, shining self, please do head to my website and join my newsletter, where you'll find out about all of my upcoming events and speaking opportunities and all of the things that I have going on. And also, if you would like to work with me, please do drop me a DM on any of my socials or through my website. Love and light.
Achieve and be. And I think with humanness, it's the same, right? We should be the master of our own being. And I think that's all we can actually ever control, is how we function on ourselves on a daily basis, and that's what creates the realities that we want to see, which you mentioned something similar earlier. And I just want to reiterate that to people, that it is about the choice. We have a choice, and every day we are choosing to choose a better way, right? And I think, what you're saying there is that every day you are choosing to speak positively to yourself and speak into yourself, which I think is really it, filling that cup up for sure.
Yeah, if I definitely think there's a lot of power in words. We've heard words have power, and that's why I'm a firm believer in affirmations. Everyone's different, but I mean, there should be something that you're doing to help you deal with all of that, because I mean, the world is heavy. We're just in a very different world, and you've got to really protect your energy, I would say. I think it's imperative at this point to make sure that you're feeding yourself with the right things. And so if you can speak positivity and life into yourself, please do that. Figure out what works for you, because everyone may not be onto affirmations, but you find what works for you. And I just found what works for me. That's all.
Yeah, love that. And that's exactly it. And we're all, same, but also very different. Like the things that work for us individually might not work for someone else. But again, like you said, it's all about that trial and error. I would love to know maybe 3 things that look like settling and 3 things that look like not settling, for queens that settle, queens that don't settle, and what the difference is. And I think that it'd be really nice to have your take on it and your top tips on that.
Okay, let me make sure I understand the question. So you want 3 things, 3 things that women are not doing that the queens that are doing? Okay.
Yes, exactly that. So if you are a settler, you can identify yourself and what does not settling look like.
Ooh, 3 things. Okay, this is good. All right, number 1, people pleasing. I mean, people pleasing. People don't realize, but people pleasing is really it's actually manipulative. I don't have the book in my mind right now, but of course I read a lot of books and have read a lot of books. But that's actually kind of a form of manipulation because you're trying to control how somebody perceives you. So you're not really being authentic. Okay. So that's one. Number two would be that you're not, I don't say that it's kind of in alignment with being a people pleaser, but it's like you don't have any boundaries. You just kind of go along to get along. You're willing, unfortunately, and it might be unconscious, okay? It might be subconscious, unconscious, but you're very agreeable. You're very agreeable. You don't really stand up for yourself. So I would say that's two. You don't have boundaries. You don't have boundaries. People pleasing, you don't have boundaries. And three, I mean, you don't love yourself. I mean, a woman, if you don't love yourself, forget love. If you don't like yourself, that's a huge problem because if you don't like yourself, how can you expect other people to like you? If you don't love yourself, how can you expect other people to love you? Like it all starts with you. Um, you know, I can go one by one, but in a nutshell, a woman who makes a decision, she makes a decision that, you know what, I really need to take my power back. Something that I'm doing is not working and something needs to change. And I would hope that she goes on, as I said before, like a self-discovery journey. What I called it for me was a spiritual self-empowerment journey, but I hope that she takes some time out to really learn about herself and her needs, her wants, but she also needs to identify where did everything come from? Like, why do I have these beliefs? Where did they come from? Where did they stem from? And a lot of it stems from your childhood. So you really need to kind of dig deep and do the inner work. I always talk about the inner work. Everyone needs to do their inner work because our outside world is a reflection of our inner world. So you need to really figure out, well, what were the messages that I was taught when I was young? What did my mother or father or the people I was around, what did they teach me? Why do I think the way that I do? Why don't I love myself? Why am I so desperate, for someone to choose me? That all comes from somewhere. And that's not something that you can do overnight, ladies. It is a journey, right? Like personal growth and personal development is ongoing. I always say that. It is not something that you just wake up one day and do work on yourself for a week and then all of a sudden you're completely healed and life is fabulous. It just doesn't work like that. It's something you have to every day. It's like an everyday thing. You work on yourself and you do your affirmations or whatever your practice is. It's just this ongoing practice of liking yourself and loving yourself and pouring into yourself.
Yes, I love all of that. Thank you for sharing. And I think what's really amazing about what you've just said is that is something that I'm constantly saying all of the time. I'm teaching everything that you've said there. So my avid listeners will be like, yeah, Sherisse says this all the time. And it's just that reiteration, isn't it? So the universe is aligning there to be like, yeah, it's not just me saying this. It's what the people in this field, the experts in this field are saying the same thing. And it absolutely is that for sure, I have a real pet peeve with people pleasing now, for women. I'm like, girl, what? Do you know what I mean? Like, come on. And I literally call it out. I'm like, now to even family members, I'm like, where's your boundary? I was like, who are you doing that for?
Yes.
And again, that's one of my boundaries for how much I give advice, because, for the work that I do now, it's like, if you want my advice, you're going to have to pay for it now. Just saying.
Hello. Snap to that.
But on an odd occasion, if I can see it and it's a big red flag, I'm like, right, what was that for? Come on, let's go. So I think that, and I think what's beautiful about that is obviously you have to practice what you preach, and you clearly are, which is amazing. And it's so wonderful to see that. And again, it's all about these little things. Like I always talk about the 1% every day of growth, of choosing you, of pouring into yourself, is a lifelong trajectory of just ascension to being that version of yourself that you want to be. And again, that full version that's overflowing, the version of you that wants to help because you are full enough to help, not because you are absolutely burnt out and you said you would, so you're doing it. It's like, no, it has to be soul aligned, because, you know, I've seen it firsthand in myself. When I was giving from an empty cup, the version of me that would show up for people was exhausted. You know, I had nothing left to give. And then my friends would take that the wrong way, because they would think that I was being awkward or hard work, or, you know, being standoffish, when actually I was just trying to survive, and I was trying to show up for people in my life when I had nothing left, right? And unfortunately, that did attract a lot of takers in my world. So I was constantly around people that were expecting the world from me, but actually not giving me even a small piece of cake, you know?
Exactly.
So I think that transition that I made into filling my cup up weeded out the people that were just taking from me to the people that wanted an exchange but didn't know how to approach that. And through you being this version of you, the full version of you, you attract the right types of people. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, right? It's like your vibe attracts your tribe. And I've said it a few times on this series, because that's exactly what's happening, you know, and it's a beautiful transition. And yes, it is scary. You know, it's scary to do something differently and to watch the people that have been in your life for a long time disappear. But the right people do come, right? And I think that, you know, like you said, that soul journey of that independence, you really do need that, because that's where you find out who you truly are and what you like, what you don't like. Because so many people, you know, if we look at school, for example, because I do a lot of teaching in the schools, this is a very good example. Like, a lot of the girls that are in cliques, or the boys that are in cliques, you know, they are a byproduct of their closest friends. So when you don't have that anymore, and you are out in the world now, traveling is a massive part of my story, which I love as well. And I think that if you want to find who you truly are, you know, spend time on your own, as we're saying, but equally traveling in a different space that you're not used to, that is going to show you so much about yourself. But, you know, even if you don't have the finances to do that, it's just, you know, spend a day. I love spending time on my own. Like, I will quite happily drive somewhere, go take myself to lunch, or even if go for a walk somewhere, take my journal, get myself a coffee, sit there. And actually I spend a lot of my time on my own. And even in relationships, that's a really, really big part of my story, is that I do like time on my own. And I feel like, you know, I said relationships there because I'm not in a relationship at the moment, and every relationship I've been in, you know, for me is a byproduct again of the childhood experiences, which is again everything that I teach. But what I've learned through every stage of either being in a relationship or not is that every time I'm upgrading into a version of myself that I want to be, that attracts the right type of person for the version of myself that I ultimately have become. So now I know that the right relationship for my forever is there and on the horizon. I can feel it around me. So everything I'm doing now is enjoying my solitude, because I know that eventually that's gonna, you know, be something I don't have as much of, because I'm going to be surrounded by so much love from this person, right? So I think that, you know, again, this is all part of that vision, but being what it is you want to attract, it all feeds into each other, doesn't it? It's all continuous.
I agree with what you just said, and being surrounded by all of that love. It's interesting you said that, because that's something that I've been saying recently is I'm surrounded by love. Love is all around me, right? And so I do want to just touch on the journey, because I know there are so many women that are afraid to do something different, like you said, kind of something I will be touching on more is sort of starting over, because I think there are a lot of women that are starting over, or they just need to hit some sort of reset button or the refresh button, because you know, you have people coming out of divorce. You have the women who their kids are grown now, they're going off to school or college, and we just have to be honest. For some of them, that's been their entire identity, and so it's now like, what do I do? Oh my God, you know. And so sometimes they don't even know who they are, and that's where you hear of the midlife crisis, you know. And so there's a lot of women starting over, and you know, the journey, yes, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. I think there are entrepreneurs and people in our space that try to make it seem like it's just, you know, easy, and you're just going to wake up and do everything and it's wonderful. And that's just not reality. I think we need to be a little bit more grounded in reality and talk about the real process. Like you said, you're not going to feel like it every day. You're not going to feel like it. People don't even feel like going to the gym every day. So like, I mean, come on, you're going to have to have something in place. You're going to have to affirm yourself. You're going to have to pour into yourself. You're going to have to, figure out what works for you. But it's a process. It's a process. You don't go from being negatively conditioned all these years, having, unfortunately, incorporated all these habits that do not serve you and did not serve you. This version of you, that just didn't serve you, to now finally awakening. But now you're choosing to be someone different. You want different. There's going to be That's going to take time as well, right? You have all these years that you were a people pleaser, and now you are on the path of honoring yourself more. Well, that it is just that it's a path, and I don't want any woman to be discouraged or feel like she can't do it. It's something you have to work on every day. It's just something that you're not going to feel like it every day. You're not going to be your best every day. If you have a list of 10 things to do, yes, you might only get 3 things done. But let's celebrate those 3 things, because there's power in showing up for yourself. Showing up for yourself, and that consistency over time, compounded, trust me, it'll be a lot, and you will grow, I would say, exponentially if you just continue to put one foot in front of the other. I think you will see the growth, and there will be growth. And yes, you will outgrow people. You will outgrow people. And so I certainly understand what you were saying. And when you're in that space, you'll get an opportunity to see kind of really who's for you and who's not, who's just taking, and who actually pours into you or feeds you at all. And the reality sometimes is that you'll be surprised. Once you're down, or once you kind of take some time off for yourself, sometimes it'll be crickets. You'll be very surprised. I'm just speaking from experience as to who might show up and who you thought would, as opposed to who really does. And so it's funny when I've heard entrepreneurs in the past kind of say, "Oh, you'll have strangers that support you more than people that you know." Now that I have been on this journey, that is actually true sometimes. People that you wouldn't think, even if it's online, you'll have some people that actually um, sort of amp you up, a lot more than people that you're close to. So I want women to know you can do this. It is a journey. It's ongoing. The personal growth and personal development is ongoing. But know that you can do this. And some of you need to hit the reset button. You need to hit the refresh button, because the way that you've been operating has not been serving you. And if you've been a people pleaser, which most of us have, let's just be honest, right? Recovering people pleaser, no more codependency. You have work to do. And I just believe, especially in today's day and the way that the world is now, you you deserve to put yourself first now. You absolutely should, and you deserve to put yourself first and to fill your cup up to fullness.
Yes, absolutely that. I was nodding and clicking and all of the things through that, because that's exactly it. And I think, you hit such an important nail on the head there with the reset button. I always say, just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it has to be that way forever. And you can make a change at any point. I think a lot of people that I speak to, because obviously I teach this stuff and I work with clients one-to-one, they're always like, "Oh, I'm waiting until I'm ready." And I'm like, unfortunately, if you wait till you're ready will come to you. And that's when everything crumbles and the walls come down, you hit rock bottom. Whereas if you can choose to dive into this work now out of choice, that's gonna give you so many tools, so then you never have to get to rock bottom. If you're climbing constantly, you are exhausted, right? Even just getting yourself out of the hole is exhausting. Whereas if you don't have to fall into the hole, you're already like 10 steps ahead. And yes, it doesn't always work that way. And I was talking about inner seasons, like sometimes we're in an inner winter, and that's a time for hibernation, recalibration. Yes, it's dark in there, but when you spend enough time in the winter and in the darkness, the spring comes. And I think that's, you know, what we're saying about honoring that stillness, honoring the silence, honoring, you know, it does feel hard and dark right now, but it won't forever. And we are going to constantly go through those loops because, again, healing is circular, not linear. And it's just, being okay with the fact that being human means that we're going to go through the cycle. So, you know, I think we can't, there's no one in this whole world that is happy and positive all the time. And if they are, they're lying to themselves.
Thank you. Gosh, we're not superhuman. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't know if you know her, the holistic psychologist. I follow her on Instagram. I love her. Nicole. I love her. And I just remember the one that she said, because I say it now, it's like, no one escapes real life. No one escapes real life, honey. So these people you see posting on social media and everything is so happy and wonderful and hunky-dory all the time. I'm like, you're fake. Stop it. Like, that's not real. Just stop it. Like, we're all human. We all have moments. We're allowed to. Like, no one goes through life without any challenges. Like, no obstacles. Like, just full of rainbows and sunshines and unicorns. Like, that's a fantasy world. Like, come on. And I know I vibe with the people who are real and authentic, and we can, transparent, and we can talk about what's going on, without any judgment, because it's life. Life is going to happen, so no.
And also, like, the people that are saying that things are great all of the time, the conversation is so surface level and meaningless. You're like, I don't even like that. I can't small talk at all. Like, if I go to a party, my friends laugh at me that I'll end up talking about trauma to someone. Like, they will open up their trauma to me and they will walk away being like, I've never told anyone this before. The amount of time I get that is, I've never told anyone this before. And I'm like, it's kind of my vibe. Like, I can't really help it. It just happens. And a lot of the time they walk away like, oh my God, Sherisse was like, she did this. And then they end up connecting me to a client, because it's just that realness, that connection of like, people are searching for this. People are searching for that rawness and that realness that we have, which is what the world needs more of, for sure. So yes, well done. And thank you for being you, because that's clearly what we need more of. And, we've attracted that vibe together for a reason. And so if anyone wanted to work with you or find you, how could they get a bit more of Radesha in their life?
Well, they can go right to queensdon'tsettle.com, radeshadixon.com. On Instagram, it's No More Broken Records, at No More Broken Records. That's the actual movement. On Facebook, at No More Broken Records as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll put all the links in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to find you and connect, they can do that through there. So to round off a really lovely and honest conversation, I always like to do like a little soul to soul message. So based on the conversation, what you'd like to share to someone listening, and or maybe something you'd even have said to your younger self.
Ooh, to my younger self. Man. What would I say to my younger self? I would probably, one thing I certainly would tell her is to not make a relationship the pinnacle, to be married or to become a mother. Like, that's not the pinnacle of womanhood. You're not, your worth is not based on your relationship status. So, go out, travel the world, live your life, find out who you are first, right? Find out who you are first. What do you like? What brings you joy? It's really spend time with yourself. And then, yes, along the way, you meet this great person, great, you get together. But, don't make a relationship sort of the pinnacle of womanhood. Get to know you first. Get to really know you first.
Absolutely, that is it, isn't it? Everything starts with you. Well, thank you so much, Radesha, for a really beautiful conversation and an honest one, as I said, which is so nice. And yeah, just a little reminder there: queens don't settle, so don't settle. That's what we have to say as a closing line. So thank you so much. And I'm going to be on Radesha's podcast as well, so I will put both links in. So if anyone loved this conversation, obviously you'll then be able to
Yes.
listen to mine
Yes.
on Radesha's podcast as well, which is obviously how we roll. We love that interconnection. So yes, thank you so much, Radesha.
Thank you. So grateful. Thank you.
If this episode resonated with you, please do like, follow, and share with someone that you know would benefit. If you're looking to dive in deeper to becoming your most unapologetic, most authentic, shining self, please do head to my website and join my newsletter, where you will find out about all of my upcoming events and speaking opportunities and all of the things that I have going on. And also, if you would like to work with me, please do drop me a DM on any of my socials or through my website. Love and light.